Now will the Wizards foul down the floor, and it's a deflection by Ruffin. And the play continues. Patterson got it! I don't believe it! I don't believe it! We're going into overtime and a Hail Mary 3 by Mo Pete! I don't believe what I just saw! Onions, baby onions!
Welcome to Raptors Weekly Extra on the eve of the Raptors beating the Hawks in Atlanta 126-115. Solid game by Lou Williams again. Solid game by Grievous Vasquez again as the Raptors start off the week 2-0 on the heels of beating Phoenix and then, of course, beating Atlanta moments ago. And joining me to talk about both games is William Lou. What's up, man?
Not much, man. How's it going?
Good, good. I see you got the McMaster sweatshirt going today.
Yeah. I'm recording this from the McMaster Silhouette office, the school paper.
Yeah. Hey, did you know that Glen Grunwald is actually at McMaster? He's the director of athletics at McMaster, yeah. And he spoke today on TSN 1050 about the school being in the Vanier Cup. He was quite excited about it.
Yeah, we should get an exclusive interview for the Raptors public.
Yeah, he actually spoke about Dwane Casey, how he had a chance to hire Dwane Casey way back in the early 2000s. And instead ended up hiring Kevin O'Neill, who lasted like 1 year. And the host asked him, like, do you kind of regret that decision? And he's like, well, you know, my gut always told me that Casey was the right choice at the time, but sometimes we kind of wanted like team discipline at the time, so we kind of went to the extreme with Kevin O'Neill, but when perhaps Casey's more balanced approach would have worked out better. But that's a story for another day. Right now, let's talk about the Hawks, man. You did the quick reaction for this one. What stood out for you?
I thought it was a really weird pace game. It ended up being like an extremely high-scoring game. The Raptors scored, I think, 126 points, and the Hawks scored 115. I thought that some solid defense was being played both ways. It was one of those games where, for the Raptors, the bench really went off. Grievous Vasquez and Lou Williams combined for 43 points on 23 shots. The starters did pretty well. DeMar DeRozan did a pretty good job scoring the basketball at 27 points on 8 of 16 shooting. So it was a weird game, definitely a little bit marred by officiating, but that's something you can come to expect when Tony Brothers working the call. But it's nice to see the Raptors get a victory in Atlanta. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, and a couple of things that caught my eye was that DeMar DeRozan versus DeMar Carroll. Remember in opening night, he had some difficulties with Carroll, who played him really tight up top, and DeRozan kind of struggled and forced a lot of bad shots. He forced some bad shots in the second half in this one too, but really he started off on fire, and he really took it to Carroll. Like he got into that mid-range area and took a fade from there rather than forcing up something from 21 feet. And those 5 feet make such a big difference in his game that the difference comes in like 8 of 16 shooting for 27 points, whereas I think in the first game he was like 4 for 18 or something like that. So props to him. But game was tight until the fourth quarter when Vasquez showed up. And he had like 12 straight points for the Raptors. At one point, he had all the Raptors' points in the fourth quarter, and I think the Raptors had 12 points, and he had all of them. I was watching the game on Ball Streams, and they got a chat window going there, and they're like, some guy said, like, with the Raptors, that's the thing. Every night, there's somebody different who can come in and just take over the game. Sometimes it's Lou Williams, sometimes it's Vasquez, sometimes it's James Johnson, and we're seeing this over and over again.
Yeah, and I mentioned this in a quick react, but I've been working sort of doing a little bit of research on why Vasquez is struggling to start the season. And then he has this game tonight, so I think that piece is effectively, scrapped for now. But the biggest difference for Vasquez tonight was he kind of slowed it down, took what the offense gave him. So if he had an advantage, on a drive, he would take it all the way to the hoop, and if he didn't, he would take the open jumper. Twice, the Hawks closed out really hard on him on the three-point line, so he took 2 steps in for an open shot at the elbow and sunk both of those shots, which is nice. I mean, obviously, you would prefer to see 3-point shots, but if they're going to close out that hard, might as well step in and take the open shot, right? In the fourth quarter, he was just open. It was kind of like the Hawks were scrambling. They played a lot of help defense, the Hawks do. So the ball eventually found its way to Vasquez on rotations, and he just sunk open shots. And it's nice to see him have a good game because he's really had a poor season to start. This is good.
Yeah, definitely. I think you got to get warmed up, and he is getting warmed up over the last 4 games, he's had 3 solid games, so he's definitely coming around. And the other thing that might have caught your eye is in the first half, Kyle Korver v. Terrence Ross / James Johnson. I think that was a good matchup to kind of watch. You always love watching Korver, work the screens, and you can totally see the Hawks are making like a real effort to get him to a particular spot where he can take a shot. So there's a lot of screens being set for him, and Terrence Ross did maybe handle the defensive duties as well. But the one thing he did today was he made Korver play defense, and he got his as well. So Ross finished with 12 points and 4 of 7 shooting, and a lot of those shots were against Korver while Korver was scoring. So Korver's threes didn't feel as bad because he was getting beat on the other end as well.
Yeah, definitely. The Hawks made a very conservative strategy to sort of play this sort of dribble handoff, curl, some type of plays with Al Horford and Korver. And the reason for that is because the defenders involved there were JV and Ross. And JV wasn't necessarily quick enough to step out and contest on Korver. So he mostly just preferred to sit back on Horford. And with Horford setting a screen sort of on a handoff there for Korver, that's just kind of how Ross ended up behind the play all the time. Eventually, Dwane Casey kind of saw no solution with that, and he kind of pulled him. But I think that it was a little bit disappointing to see Ross kind of make the same mistakes, but there's some reasoning behind that. I mean, I guess that some of the limitation was on JV as well for not being able to defend that type of play. Yeah. And admittedly, like, Korver is a really tough cover. Like, Zach Lowe wrote about him over the summer and basically called him the Hawks' secret superstar because he really is so incredibly hard to cover, and the Hawks run a lot of great plays for him. So
he reminds me a little bit of Del Curry, not shot release or anything like that, but shot readiness when he catches. There's one play tonight where, as you said, I think Horford's setting a screen for him, and the screen takes him like beyond the 3-point line, and Ross is just trailing the play, and 99% of players in the NBA at that point don't even dare take a shot. But he kind of leans forward. Even though he's slanted, his shot release is vertical. It's really odd, and he nails it. And you look at Ross after that. He's like, what am I supposed to do there? Other than sending another guy from the other side of the screen, there's no way you can play any better. But James Johnson had some success against Korver. He got a shot block and contained him a little bit better. But overall, in a game like this, Korver wasn't that much of a factor in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely annoying because I think everyone, when they watch his Korver, they know his one thing is he wants to come off a screen and take a three. Like, everyone knows this. And when he's successful, it's very frustrating because, like, how could you not game plan for this? But, like, with Korver, he's kind of a superstar in that sense. Like, with the superstar, you can't take away everything. And with Korver, it's just almost impossible to hold him to without any threes. And I think that I think Ross did a reasonable job with Korver. It takes a lot of effort. It's definitely not just one guy covering. It takes more than one guy to cover Korver. And yeah, given that Ross was sort of attacked along with JV quite a bit, I think that whatever shots Korver got, I think that's sort of the blame is split between the two of them.
Yeah, and like some other notables here. Kyle Lowry, not a great shooting game, but oh my God, did he have an impact here? 13 assists, and he missed a couple of open threes here, but like his play is so strong, especially when the Raptors were feeling the surge. Like they had a 10-point lead, and it got whittled down to say 4 or something. The ball went to Lowry, and he did something, whether it was setting up JV on a pick and roll, or whether it be kicking out to Ross for a 3, or setting up DeRozan. He did something. He made a play happen every time the Raptors needed him to. And that, like, I look at the box score right now, 33 minutes, 14 points. That doesn't stick out. But you got to have to watch the game to know that he was so influential in times where the Raptors had their backs to the walls a little bit. Because they maintained a 10-point lead throughout the game, except for, like, maybe the second half. It came down to 4 or 6. But when the Hawks were tied, when the Hawks were within 1, it was Lowry who stepped up and made the play.
Yeah. Perfect example of this. The Hawks were sort of making a run. I think the Raptors stretched it out to about a 10-point lead in the second quarter, and then the Hawks kind of made a run. And then for 3 straight possessions, Lowry just posted up Dennis Schroeder, who's pretty like a tall, lanky kind of dude, but pretty skinny. And Lowry backed him down in the post and got 3 consecutive scores. 2 of them were fouls. 1 of them was a made shot. So that's kind of his role. He has a great sense for this during the game, and when he needs to, he steps up and makes sure that everyone else is calm and that the Raptors kind of buoy their lead. So it's good work by him.
Okay, I'm going to ask you for a response here. I'm looking at the quick reaction comments right now. The first guy is James. He's pointing out 27 points and only a B+ for DeMar DeRozan. Haters going to hate. What do you say to that, Will?
I mean, I see where he's coming from, because if you just look at shooting stats, he looked fine. Like 8 of 16 is really good. 9 of 9 on free throws is obviously very good. So that's very good, but he also committed 5 turnovers. So if you sort of assess it on a possession basis, he kind of used about 24 to 25 possessions and scored 27 points. So that's not that great. Mm-hmm. So I think B+ is fine. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it kind of takes a lot for, DeMar to get an A+ now, or even any A grade, because he's an all-star, and this is kind of what we kind of expect from him. Maybe I could bump it up to A-, but whatever. It's not a big deal.
Well, there you go, James.
The grades don't matter, guys. The grades really don't matter that much.
Apparently they do. A couple of rebounding notes from this game. The Raptors, as you know, have been struggling with on the boards, and they've been consistently -10, -15 in some of the games this year. But this game, they actually won the rebounding battle. They had 36 to the Hawks' 32 rebounds. Team effort. Nobody dominated with like 12 boards or anything like that. But JV got in there with 7. Lowry got in there with 6. He always tries. Whenever he's not having a great shooting game, he always makes an effort to actually go contribute somewhere else, and he did that here. And off the bench, I thought Patrick Patterson did a solid job in 21 minutes, 7 rebounds. Patterson, the offense isn't coming around, but at least he looks to be more cohesive in the second unit. So kind of like Vasquez, where it took a little while for his shot to come. You see Patrick Patterson finding his way as well?
Yeah, I just feel like Patrick Patterson didn't really look for a shot today. Like he only took one shot, and his main role in offense is really just to sort of set a screen and then stand in the corner and wait for kickouts and stretch the floor that way. But I mean, otherwise, I think he did. He's coming on strong defensively, which is weird, because Patrick Patterson's like pretty small when it comes to a front court player. But and it's not like the Hawks have like dominant interior presences or anything, but I thought he did a pretty good job.
Wow, Horford was all right. He had 23 points, 11 of 16 shooting. But Horford's an extremely tough cover, especially for a guy who, like JV, who's not the most mobile guy. Like Horford's just a beast, and the way Horford gets his points, he can do nothing about it. He's a good pick and roll player. Back to the basket is good. Every time Teague drove, Horford knows where to be to receive the pass. So those two have good chemistry going. I'd say those are the only two Hawks that have great chemistry going at this point. But Horford's a tough cover, so the 23 points he scored, kind of expected. Other than that, the Raptors win on the road. They move to 13-2 at this point, 4-1 on the road, so impressive on every account. So earlier in the week, the Raptors had another impressive win. It was against a Western Conference opponent in the Phoenix Suns on Monday night. They won the game 104-100.
It was an interesting game because the Raptors got up to such a big lead. The Suns had absolutely no solution for JV. He went 10 for 11 from the field and scored 27 points. As most teams eventually do against the Raptors, they play super small and force Dwane Casey into making some really tough choices as to whether or not to keep imposing size advantage or to match up. And in the fourth quarter, Dwane Casey tried to steal some minutes with his bench. The combination of Chuck Hayes and Gravis Vasquez were just simply way too slow to cover the Suns players. Plus, Isaiah Thomas and Gerald Green got really hot in some sort of ridiculous 5-out lineup that the Suns played, and they got back into the game, and it got really close. But then Lowry made a pretty key steal, and then they closed it out. I mean, it's weird because it never really felt like the game was in doubt, even though the Suns made a huge comeback.
Well, 14 for 33 were the Suns that night, 42% from three. Once they were down 15, you knew that early in the fourth quarter they would do the only thing they know how to do, which is just bomb away from three, which they're very good at. And lo and behold, they got back into the game. I mean, you didn't have doubts. I certainly had my doubts when Thomas was kind of going off there. Let's talk about JV for a second here. Solid game again, 10 for 11. Player of the game, I'd say.
Probably his best game as a Raptor, offensively.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, certainly in terms of field goal percentage and point total. I think it was a career high as well. So, good on Casey for actually not going small early and imposing the physical advantage that he has. We talked about in the last pod that he has two options when he does this. Either go small or, impose yourself, and he did the latter. and it paid off greatly because JB was basically eating alive Plumlee, who has no shot blocking, and just taking to the rim. And the same he was doing with Alex Len. They put Alex Len on him, hoping to bother him with his length, but it just didn't work. But man, fast over to the fourth quarter. The Raptors are up 2. Thomas has the ball. You could argue Phoenix has the momentum. And Lowry comes up with a huge steal and totally anticipates how Thomas is going to swing the ball over to the other side of his body and just puts his hand right where the dribble is going to be, and he swipes it. And then there's a jump ball, and for some reason, maybe you can explain this to me, he doesn't get to jump with Amir Johnson. He gets to jump with Kyle Lowry. Did you watch the replay, and do you have an explanation for that?
I really don't, because Lowry tips the ball away from Thomas, and then there's a scramble on the ground, and Lowry kind of ends up below Thomas, and Thomas has the ball sort of facing upwards or skywards, and then Amir Johnson's the guy who actually ends up tying up Isaiah Thomas. So I have no idea why Lowry was the one to jump. Maybe it just would have been too ridiculous to jump Amir with 5'9" Isaiah Thomas.
We've seen it though. I mean, it's the rules are the rules, man. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, the officiating in that game was pretty questionable. I think Jeff Hornacek, the Suns coach, was sort of audibly he was complaining about the calls. And when I was watching it at home, it was pretty frustrating to see inconsistent officiating, which kind of made its way into the Hawks game as well. It's weird with Lowry because on these hustle plays, you almost always expect him to come through with it, and on this one he did. He wins the jump ball and tips it back to his teammates, and Raptors basically win the game from there.
Yeah, see, that's why I always felt like the officiating should they should have a press conference like they do for coaches, for officials as well, like a 5-minute, not all 3, maybe the lead guy just talks to the press for 5 minutes. It would be entertaining as hell and give us a lot of material to write about. I don't know, NBA, look into that stuff.
Yeah, I think the NBA really wants to bury any sort of controversies with officials, right? Because of the nasty Tim Donaghy history. But that would be fun. I agree.
Yeah. So, 2-0 week so far. We'll take a quick break and come back and preview the other 2 games in the week. So here we are in part 2 of Raptors Weekly Extra, a special podcast following the Atlanta win, 126-115. The Raptors won. They got 2 more games in the week. The first is Friday night versus Dallas, 7:30 p.m. start at the ACC. Any former Raptors returning here, or we're done with that stuff? No Calderon, they traded him. No Vince. I remember when Dallas used to come to town for 7 years. The number one thing was the Bargnani-Dirk comparisons, and they were so painful because in a pregame they always used to compare the stats and the height and the skills, and it just never measured up, and it was just so awkward as a viewer trying to draw parallels between one Hall of Famer and Andrea Bargnani's.
Well, I mean, speaking of Raptors high picks that were projected as stretch big men, there actually is a former Raptor on the Dallas Mavericks, and that's Charlie Villanueva.
CV.
Yeah,
CV, yeah.
Good old CV. Remember when he dropped 48 points as a rookie?
Yeah.
We were all in on CV.
Rob Babcock did a lot of horrible things, but drafting CV wasn't one of them. When CV got picked, every Raptor fan at the time wanted to draft Gerald Green, who had a horrible start to his NBA career. Now he's coming around, but at the time, all the Raptor fans were sold on Gerald Green. And when CV was picked, there was a bit of a who the hell's this guy type reaction. But it turned out that he was a half-decent player. Didn't play any defense and still doesn't. But so Rob Babcock did something right.
He was fine. He got flipped for TJ Ford, who one of my favorite Raptors for kind of no reason at all.
Oh, I love TJ Ford. Tenacious guy. Kind of the same reason we love Lowry, for his tenacity, for his aggressiveness. Ford obviously less talented, but same personality of a player.
Yeah, Ford's like a pest, whereas Lowry is a pest, but he'll actually get the ball from you afterwards.
Right. Yeah. So Dallas, they beat New York, who fall to 4-12, by the way, man. Oh, the Knicks are horrible.
Yeah, now Melo's injured too. Oof.
Oh, man. 11-5, the Mavericks are. They beat the Knicks 109-102 in overtime. Looking at the box score, big games from Dirk Nowitzki, 11 of 24, 3 steals. He's having a decent year again. Chandler Parsons actually working out, even though he had a kind of poor game in New York. The Mavericks come in at 11-5 at this time. Got to check on this one?
It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
The Mavericks offense right now is stupid good. Yeah. It is historically good right now. If they're able to manage or maintain their production. Zach Lowe over at Grantland wrote a beautiful piece on this in his Tuesday column. sort of describing the Mavericks offense. And not only is it like filled with like veterans who like are pretty skilled and know their role, and they have a really great coach. There's also like so much shooting on that team and a lot of guys who can handle the ball. And it's a very decentralized offense. And it's not like just like one or two guys going off. Like, yeah, I mean, you think about Dirk, you think about Monte, but you still have to really consider, like, how am I going to guard Tyson Chandler on a pick and roll when he's rolling down to the basket and there's shooters everywhere? There's, you know, like, do you send help? Do you just go one-on-one? And obviously Dirk is always able to get a shot off anytime he wants. So it's going to be a really, really, really tough game.
Yeah, this looks like it's going to be a track meet. By the way, Tyson Chandler had 25 rebounds and 17 points in this game. So I'd say this is the biggest test so far for the Raptors, at least defensively. I know Chicago was a pretty tough game, Miami on the road. But in terms of whether their defense will be tested, I'd say it'll be more so in this game as it has so far this season. Again, as you mentioned, threats at every position. Monte Ellis one-on-one versus DeRozan, it could be a problem. Devin Harris, he's still old, but he's playing smarter basketball as he gets older. He's one of those guys he knows that he's not a great shooter, but he's adapted his game where he's more of a distributor now. Chandler, obviously, and Nowitzki is Nowitzki, so we don't really have anybody to match up for that. So look forward to maybe Chuck Hayes at some point versus Tyson Chandler in this game. I don't know, man. This is going to be a really tough one. My key matchup here is really going to be at center, where are we going to be able to control the boards and at least be respectable on the boards? Because with Tyson Chandler in there, it could get ugly for the Raptors, especially if JB picks up a couple of early fouls. So foul trouble is going to be huge here because the Raptors can't afford to lose. They can't afford to bring in Steamsma in the first half. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they can't afford to bring in Steamsma anytime. Like, if Steamsma's in the game, it's either, like, something great's happening or something terrible's happening. Yeah, I think the possession battle is going to be pretty key for the Raptors. I think, like, we kind of overlook the sort of possession angle a lot of the times, but the Raptors have been awesome at not committing turnovers and also generating turnovers, so creating a possession advantage that way. Look, Dallas is going to score. If they're able to get a shot off, they're probably going to sink that shot. The key is to limit how many possessions they have. So really cut down on the offensive boards, make sure to defensive rebound really well, and not turn the ball over, and maybe force the Mavericks into some turnovers of their own, because the Mavericks play a lot with Ellis and Chandler Parsons handling the ball. While they're pretty good for their position on the aggregate, as compared to like a pretty sure-handed point guard, they're not as good. So if you can like generate some turnovers that way, keep your turnovers down, and don't let the Mavericks crash the offensive glass, I think there's a chance that the Raptors could squeak one out.
Yeah, I think Terrence Ross is going to be big here too. James Johnson as well, in terms of like rebounding from the small forward position, because they have so much size up front with Nowitzki and Chandler, who both are good rebounders, that the Raptors might need help from other areas, and chimes in with your possession talk as well, because the more rebounds you get, the more possessions you generally get. So take care of defensive glass, don't give up offensive boards, and we should have a chance here. The one encouraging thing for the Raptors is that they are getting their assist total is increasing with every game now. We're not seeing that ridiculous like 14 assist games anymore. They're sharing the rock a little bit better, and against the Dallas team, they might be great on offense, but they will concede points on defense. So if you're able to stay within your offense, generate points, you should be in the game. The latest signs against the Hawks and against Phoenix is that our assist numbers are going back up, so that's an encouraging sign heading into a game where offense is going to be, number one.
Yeah, I really don't think scoring on Dallas will be too much of a problem. They just really don't have the personnel to defend. Nowitzki's like way too old, plus he's never really been a good defender. Tyson Chandler can't defend everything by himself. And if you get him in foul trouble, like it's like Brandon Wright is coming in after him, who is shooting like a ridiculous 80% on the season because all he does is catch lobs. But he's not really he's not really a defender. He's like very skinny, and if you like crash and body into him, you probably get some foul calls. And their wing defenders are pretty weak. Chandler Parsons is kind of a below average to average defender. Monte Ellis is kind of inconsistent. He gambles a lot for steals. So, I think the Raptors should have an okay time scoring the ball. I mean, the Raptors are the second-ranked offense, and after tonight, probably like that number probably bumps up a little bit, and the Mavericks are the top-ranked offense. But there's a pretty big gap between the two of them. I think it's like the gap between the Mavericks offense and the Raptors offense is the same as the gap between the Raptors offense and the 13th ranked offense. So it's nuts.
Yeah, Dallas is number one by a good stretch. So this game actually is the last home game before a 3-game road trip. Don't get scared. It's just the Lakers, the Kings, and the Jazz. So it's a fairly easy road trip the Raptors will embark on. It starts Sunday night in LA at 9:30 p.m. Eastern tip-off. So it's a Sunday game, then a back-to-back on Tuesday and Wednesday. So the Lakers, been watching any Lakers this year? Well, you're forced to, right? Because they're on national TV all the time, despite being absolute shit.
Yeah. Plus, it's kind of fun to see Kobe gun like this. He's taking it to a whole new level with his gunning. Yeah, the Lakers are really, really, really bad. They can't shoot. Their best big man is Ed Davis. Right. That's obviously Julius Randle getting hurt in the first game of the season is devastating. But like this Lakers team is just awful, and if you let them, basically, Kobe Bryant will just shoot all their shots for them, and they'll play absolutely zero defense. So I know it's on the road and in Los Angeles, and there's plenty of time for the Raptors to maybe get themselves into trouble, but this one should be an easy win. I mean, really don't see the Lakers putting up much of a fight.
Yeah, they are playing Memphis tonight, and they're losing that game. They're on a homestand here. They got a 4-game homestand, and the Raptors are the last game on their homestand. After which they're going to hit the East Coast. So they're going to be their last chance at a win probably in quite some time. The only thing attractive about the Lakers is to just see Kobe just jack up left and right. I know he's trying to be like the team leader there. I know when you talk to him in interviews, he tries to be the quote-unquote the old head there, I guess. But when he steps on the basketball court, he just looks like a ball hog.
He is a ball hog, and he's trying as hard as he can to break Michael Jordan's points. Is
that
record.
why he's in the league?
I think that's it, right? He's only in the league he's still getting paid like $25 million per year. So, but I mean, yeah, I think he wants to beat Michael in the scoring race. Michael's third, Kobe's fourth right now. I think he's on pace to break it sometime in December. And I think maybe after that, he might gun for number 2. And if he plays like 3 more years, he can actually beat Kareem and be number 1.
But that's such
crazy.
Unless you get number 1 there, it's such a pointless record to hold. I don't think it matters. That's one of those records that it sounds impressive, but when you just think about it for like 30 seconds, you're like, who cares? It's more about points per game that matters. It's about all-star appearances, not who has the most points. It's kind of like Lenny Wilkins, the winningest coach in the NBA. It doesn't really matter if you got the most wins in the NBA. It's about the period of time we took you to get there. So Kobe, I don't know, man. I don't know. So Lakers, there's not much to talk about here, man. The Raptors probably will win this game. The Lakers currently they've lost, 6 of 8 games, and they've only had 3 wins all year, and they're currently at 3-11, which is just horrible on every regard. So,
especially if you attack the interior with the Lakers, they're so bad on the inside. Ed Davis is like a nice guy. I mean, we all know Ed Davis.
Yeah, Jordan Hill after that.
Yeah, like they don't protect the rim. They foul pretty readily, and if you get them in, like, just continuously drive. Like, DeMar should have a field day with this game. As long as he's not sort of goaded into, like, battling Kobe in style, like, as long as he's not taking a whole bunch of fadeaways for some reason. Like, any Raptor can get, like, if you started Bruno and, like, made Bruno attack the paint, Bruno could probably score on this Lakers team. So
yeah, in their last game against Denver, they were 3 of 24 from 3-point line. 3 of 24.
Yeah,
that's Denver. Denver gives up the 3-point line.
Exactly. And before the season, Byron Scott was talking about how he doesn't really believe in the 3-point line. He doesn't really believe the 3-point shooting wins championships, which is weird because the last, like, I don't know, the Spurs, the Mavericks, the Heat, they all really, really emphasize the 3-point shooting. And, Byron Scott's sort of this, like, weird caricature from, like, the 90s who was like, nah, we got to go inside all the time because we have Jordan Hill and Ed Davis. So clearly they're going to get us to the playoffs.
He may be right that 3-point shooting alone can't win titles, but nothing alone can win titles.
Yeah, exactly. It's a balance.
Yeah, and the one product of 3-point shooting is good floor spacing. And I'm sure if you ask any coach, would they like great floor spacing, they'd say, yeah, floor spacing is very important. And the biggest way you can get good floor spacing is if you're a good 3-point shooting team. So, I know the comments you're talking about, and I didn't quite get those because even his Showtime Lakers, they weren't, a great 3-point shooting team, but they didn't play traditional half-court basketball. They played run and gun up and down the court, a very fluid style of game, which, or in the 90s, you would say that doesn't win you championships, because in the 90s it was all about the half-court, the half-court, the half-court. He's being a little hypocritical, because if he believes that three-point shooting doesn't win championships, then his Laker teams of the 80s played a style of basketball which many would argue isn't conducive to winning championships, but I don't know. Scott's,
it's like he's missing a fundamental aspect of basketball, being able to move the ball to shooters who are threats to score from beyond the 3-point line helps you create space inside. So if you skew so heavily on mid-range shots, which I think they lead the league in mid-range attempts, and instead of shooting threes, teams are just going to clamp down in the paint. And with today's rules of being able to play zone type defenses, they'll just eat that up. The only way to beat that is with balanced 3-point shooting. Although now that they have Swaggy P back, maybe they'll take more threes. I don't know.
Well, we'll look forward to that. And prediction here, obviously, Raptors win. What's your prediction for Dallas?
I'm gonna say loss. The Mavericks offense is really scary, and I know they're on the road and stuff, but yeah.
I don't know. Let's see how Casey game plans for that one. It's going to be interesting to see.
And the Raptors won both games against the Mavericks last season, although if one of them, Dirk, wasn't playing. But if you remember, on the road against Dallas, DeMar hit a big shot to send them sort of into overtime, and then they won after this crazy loose ball chase with Amir on the ground and stuff. So, and that was one of the biggest wins that sparked the Raptors' run.
Exactly, and the Thunder win, right? It happened I think on the same road trip even,
yep.
And those two games kind of started the renaissance that is currently we're seeing, the resurgence, I should say.
Yeah. Here's a quick stat.
Yeah.
Tamberlin style. Since trading Rudy Gay, the Raptors are 55-24, which is a win percentage of 71.4%, which if you prorate that over an 82-game season, that's 58 wins. That's insane.
Well, if you prorate 13-2 over 82 games, that's like Chicago Bulls, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Winning 70 games. All right.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Raptors gonna beat the Bulls record of 72 wins.
All right. I think that wraps it up. It's a short podcast. It's a Raptors Weekly Extra podcast. We'll be back maybe on Tuesday this time for the podcast, because the Lakers game is late on Sunday night. So I don't know if we'll be able to record on Sunday night. But if we're not, definitely on Monday, meaning that you'll have a podcast late on Monday night, or at worst Tuesday morning. So talk to you guys then.